the most unbelievable English story you've never heard before. Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak in English. I'm so glad you're here because today, I'm about to share with you one of the most unbelievable English stories you've probably never heard before. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be left shaking your head in disbelief. It's a story about love, betrayal, survival, and the kind of twist that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is one of the most mind-blowing stories in English literature, and yet it's often overlooked. So, grab a seat, get comfortable, and prepare yourself for a journey into one of the wildest and most unbelievable tales I've ever come across. Ready? Let's dive in. Our story begins in the early 1900s, in a small, quiet village in England. Imagine a place where nothing much ever happens. A sleepy town surrounded by rolling hills, where everyone knows each other's business, and the most exciting event is the annual Harvest Festival. But in this town, there was a man named John, an unassuming, hardworking farmer, living a simple life. John wasn't particularly wealthy or influential. In fact, many people in the town didn't think much of him. He kept to himself, worked the land, and rarely ventured beyond the borders of his village. But there was one thing about John that was different from everyone else. He had a secret, and that secret was about to change his life forever. One foggy morning, a stranger arrived in the village. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and had a look in his eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. No one knew who he was or where he came from, but something about him immediately caught the attention of the townsfolk. Now, in small villages like this, strangers don't just pop up without reason. People talk, they gossip, and they ask questions. But this stranger was different. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't introduce himself, and didn't even make eye contact. He simply walked through the village, heading straight toward John's farm. John, who was busy working in the fields, noticed the stranger approaching. His heart raced, but he didn't know why. He had a feeling that this man was connected to the secret he had carried for years. The question was, what did the stranger want? As the stranger approached, he didn't waste any time. "John," he said, "I know what you've been hiding." John froze. His blood ran cold. How could this man possibly know? He had kept his secret hidden for over a decade. He had thought that no one could ever find out. And yet, here was a complete stranger, standing in front of him, knowing something that only he should have known. The stranger continued, "You don't remember me, do you? But I remember you. We were once very close." John's mind raced, but he couldn't place this man. His voice sounded familiar, but his face was a blur. The stranger smiled knowingly. "I think it's time you remember." And just like that, the stranger revealed John's secret. A secret so shocking that it would change everything. For both of them. The truth was something even John hadn't expected. The stranger wasn't just anyone. He was someone from John's past. Someone John had forgotten about. Someone he had thought was dead. Years ago, John had been involved in a tragic accident. A shipwreck. He had been a young man, traveling across the seas with a group of friends, when the ship they were on sank. Everyone died. Or so he thought. But in the wreckage, John had made a choice that haunted him for years. He had made the decision to leave one person behind, a close friend, someone he loved like a brother. He thought he had lost him forever, but the truth was far more complicated. The stranger standing before him was none other than his long-lost friend, who had survived the wreck. But the story didn't end there. The stranger had been living under a different identity, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth to John. As the two men sat down in the field, the stranger told John the story of what had happened after the shipwreck. He had been saved by a passing vessel, but he had been so badly injured that he couldn't remember much of what had happened. He was taken to a different country, where he was treated and nursed back to health, but in the process, he lost his identity. He had to start over. He had no choice but to leave his old life behind. But the most heartbreaking part? The stranger had spent years trying to find John, to tell him that he was still alive, to make peace with what had happened. But fate had kept them apart, until now. John listened, stunned by the weight of what he was hearing. He couldn't believe it. For years, he had carried the guilt of thinking he had abandoned his friend. But now, that guilt was replaced with something even more profound: gratitude. Gratitude that his friend had survived and that they had found each other again. Over the next few weeks, John and the stranger, now reunited, spent time together, catching up on lost years. They talked about their lives, their families, and the paths they had taken. It was as though no time had passed at all, but the experience had changed both of them. John was no longer burdened by the guilt of the past, and the stranger, finally free from his secret, could look forward to a future filled with hope. This story, this unbelievable, heart-wrenching tale, is a reminder of the power of survival, the weight of the past, and the beauty of second chances. Sometimes, life gives us twists and turns that we can't predict. But in the end, it's the connections we make, the relationships we rebuild, that give our lives meaning. So, what do you think? Could you imagine carrying such a heavy secret for so many years? How would you have reacted if you were in John's shoes? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. If this story left you speechless, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And of course, subscribe to Asterisk. Speak in English for more incredible stories that will make you see the world in a new light. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.